So today I'm going to be going over slavery in the U.S. Constitution. That was enshrined in the U.S. Constitution. The historical context for this is that prior to the U.S. Constitution, there were the Articles of Confederation. Right after the Revolutionary War, this was concocted. There were other important people, John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and Benjamin Franklin, who were also pretty outspokenly against slavery. Yeah, so Benjamin Franklin, really, certainly very outspoken. And then Shays Rebellion happens. So basically, this rebellion was a final rebellion. The Articles of Confederation couldn't put it down, so they realized the colonists states realized they needed uh, stronger federal government, stronger central government. And so the result was the Constitutional Convention, which was a convention with a lot of delegates from each state, which conversed and talked about the new Constitution, how it's going to be made, what it's going to be in. Further historical context here is that at the Constitutional Convention, there were a lot of moral qualms going into it in regards to slavery based on religion, and but there were also fiscal ones like money. It was a large part of uh, most slave states' economies. There was also a 2-to-1 ratio of non-slaveholders to slaveholders at the convention. However, it isn't very representative of the opinions, as non-slaveholders could also still be very pro-slavery, and slaveholders were almost certainly pro-slavery. It wasn't not versus pro. It was maybe versus yes. So the 2-to-1 isn't necessarily representative of the opinions held. Um, there was also, this is coming off of the Revolutionary War, where 5,000 black men fought for the Continental Army. So these, a lot of people at this convention had at least heard of uh, comrades that were African American, and most slaves were black at the time. So they certainly had more reforms in relation to that for that reason. Uh, Now, there are three arguments when held at the Constitutional Convention in regards to slavery. The first one I'm going to go over is representation. That is how slaves were represented in the voting system for Congress. The northern states did not want slave representation because, well, they figured they didn't want to give the South more power than they already have. Slave free states, or slave states are more power. The southern states wanted it because their populations were heavily black, so it would boost their representation by a lot. Compromise made was the free fist compromise, where of course slaves were considered free fifths of a person. So for every 5 slaves, you have 3 people worth of representation. The second argument was over the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade. And those against it were basically Maryland, Massachusetts, and Virginia. And those who were pro slave trade, transatlantic slave trade, or South Carolina, specifically John Rutledge, who represented the interests of South Carolina a lot, versus Virginia and Massachusetts. He figured they were trying to get rid of the transatlantic slave trade because they had so many slaves already. They would have a basic monopoly on it in the future, the industry, as they call it. Whereas he wanted it open to help the economy of South Carolina stay viable. It also said that the compromise was that he was permitted in South Carolina and other states, southern, were permitted for 20 years to continue the transatlantic slave trade, and at least, and it would be taxed, which led the framework towards getting away from slavery, which entitled to later. The third and final main argument was over fugitive slaves. And I say argument very lightly because it was held by impatient delegates who, was late August, they longed to go home. So it wasn't necessarily an argument. And there was already precedent for fugitive slaves in Indian territory. It was also the Northwest Territory in 1787. There was some historical agreement. So they agree without compromise that this constitutional convention in regard to the fugitive slaves, making constitutional credit. The language in the founding document of the U.S. Constitution, uh, slave and slavery are really words that you can find. And so there's more euphemisms for them. And the idea is it's kind of an ugly word even at the time. And mainly it wasn't in their most important document, the draft constitution. Uh, but it also provided a help in a legal way to abolish slavery further on, since it wasn't technically a constitutional uh, protection of slavery, uh, since it was like it's never used. In China, as a result, the Quakers were pretty upset, and other groups were also very upset. The framework prolonged slavery and allowed for it to be prolonged pretty long, and give a lot of protections, specifically because the drafters of the United States Constitution were very pro private property rights, and the framework of slavery allowed them to be basically constitutional human property, which, since property is so heavily defended, led to very difficult manner getting rid of slavery because it was so protected uh, in China. The results were, of the Constitutional Convention and basic slave document Constitution is that you can no longer blame Britain for slavery in the U.S. Whereas before it was a practice started by Britain and in the colonies, so it was more excusable, or at least by the colonists. Uh, Now it was accepted, basically, since it wouldn't be forced into a war until far, far later. It was prolonged from there to Britain. Britain also got rid of slavery far before the U.S. Why? Why was the Constitutional Convention a victory for slavery? As you can see in this graph, this image, right? There was just more slave states than free states, and that led to an imbalance that unfortunately let the slave states have more power in the discussion. The free states had to compromise. They had to be willing to give up a lot, and they did, which is why it lasted so long. And it was so difficult to get rid of slavery because that's what we tried. Uh, some recap here is that there's three arguments for slavery in the Constitutional Convention in the U.S. Constitution. There's three protections basically. There's freed slaves, which have to be returned. Uh, Slave trade was permitted for 20 years at least, with tax. And there's representation of three-fifths of a person, is what they say a slave was, for Congress reasons. But there was also language that was omitted, slavery, which kind of gave workaround framework that the drafters hoped, or at least historians think they hoped would lead to the abolition of slavery eventually. Slavery was prolonged. It lasted 30 years, roughly longer than it did in Britain, whereas in Britain it was abolished in roughly 1833. And here in the US, it was more so 1865. Here are my references. I have a private website. I have PBS reading assignment, which I'm just there. And then I have this, the book. Thank you for this.